The tariff wars continue as President Trump seeks to renegotiate America's trade relationship with the rest of the world. The United States and Israel keep up pressure on Iran over its nuclear program as negotiations continue. Russia continues to refuse a ceasefire with Ukraine, and President Trump blames Zelensky for the war. And finally, the United States unveils its new 6th-gen fighter, the F-47. You're listening to Mensch-Kight Geopolitics. Mensch-Kight Geopolitics is your home for conservative commentary on international affairs with an eye toward Israel and the Middle East. I'm your host, Isaac Kight, your lovable lawnsman, your gregarious Vulcan, your mad genius, your shadow president, and your prophet of things to come. Welcome back, Mention Insiders, the listeners of this erudite podcast. Love you all. Glad that you're listening. It's another episode, a little later than I intended. I am trying to get them out more often, like I said. I'm going to try and see if I can get them to be shorter and more to the point as well. But new format, working out the kinks. Anyhow, if I posted more often, I wouldn't have as much to talk about and it wouldn't drag on for an hour and a half. So, curious your thoughts about the new branding. You can find the show on X, formerly Twitter, Mensch-Kight Geopolitics. Look me up, and then you'll be able to make your opinions known there. That is the place where I'm most active. So, anyhow, new name, new feel. Just going out there and doing my thing. One interesting thing, I've gone from with the old name, Inside Israel News, that people thought I lived in Israel. And now, because of the new branding everywhere I post, it immediately draws out the anti-Semites. I literally had a guy attack me. I wrote a comment about something in Canadian politics, and the guy was like, "Shut up, Jew." And I'm like, wow, okay, shut up, Nazi. And the guy's like, there's nothing wrong with being a Nazi. Yeah, there's everything wrong with being a Nazi. But when you're a psychopath, I guess you don't know that. So anyway, don't spend a lot of time arguing with these nutters. But, there are definitely some nutters out there. Whew. So I just posted a picture of Berlin in 1945 and said, this is what Nazism leads to. So there you go. Anyway, so there you are. But, I had plenty of anti-Semites before, and I've got anti-Semites now. They're just operating under different assumptions, I guess. So that's just how the cookie crumbles, I suppose. Hag Sameach, happy Passover. Hope everybody's having a good holiday. Going without leavened bread for 7 days. Had a great Seder with the fam. And we added a new tradition this year. The Persian Jews have a tradition where they get green onion stalks and use them to whip each other at the table when we're about to get to the bitter herbs. So we introduced this to the family, and the kids had a blast. It was a great time. The highlight of our Seder, whipping each other with these green onion stalks. It got silly very quickly, and one of my oldest son even fell over in his chair. It was very exciting. So it was a way to introduce some fun to the Seder. But we had a good time, and then we ate. It's like half the point of Judaism is the food, right? This is like we were slaves. We were badly treated. God gave us our freedom. Let's eat. All right. This is going to be the last episode I post before Easter. So happy Easter to Christian listeners. Hope that you guys have a great holiday there. And, that's that. So I'm enjoying the spring weather. It's warming up just a little bit. I spent a lot of time up in Canada working this spring, and it's been chilly. So I am enjoying the warmer weather myself very much. Although I had to work in Texas for a little while, and while I was there, it managed to be cold. Like, how does Texas do that? Typically Texas isn't that cold a place. So anyway, it was nice and warm one day and then cold and chilly and breezy and wet the next. And it was like, oh my God. There's that. As always, want to remind you to go over to goodintentions.com, check out the Good Intentions newsletter by Bob Zeidman. He's got a couple of great books, Animal Lab and Good Intentions. Some fun stuff. Like I said, I've been reading a little bit more fiction lately, and it's great to read from an author who shares your political beliefs because, I don't know about you, but I am tired of the wokeness out there. You try to watch something entertaining, and it's like everything is woke, It just... it gets frustrating after a while. Like, you can't enjoy it. Anyway, so let's move on to tariffs. I get a lot of questions, a lot of people curious about tariffs. I want to start with this on the tariff wars. Let's talk about the perceptions, right? Polls out there show that, plus 24, right? People think a margin of 24 points. People think that this will bring jobs to the U.S. It's overwhelmingly popular. Trump's approval ratings are up. I mean, there's all the elites around the world are out there, oh God, Trump's destroying the economy and all this horrible thing. And, the rest of the world, like, everyone else is yawning. Yeah. Investors are freaking a little bit. They often do, right? I mean, if there was a danger to your investment, you would sell as well, right? It's something that people do. But when the economy starts to recover, it's come up and down a little bit here and there. It will recover on firmer ground, right? We're already transitioning from a largely public financing driven economy, or a, too greatly public financed economy, over to one that is more closely centered on the private market and private industry. So since we're making this shift already, there's already been a market correction for that, and we're correcting for the tariff thing as well. Now, all right. Now, before people get too far off the reservation, because I've heard, even from the Goodfellows podcast, the Hoover Institute, and I like people like Neil Ferguson and H.R. McMaster and all those guys, but, they're academics. the academicians and the Goodfellows, they're up there with the stuffy elite, and they just don't see things like landsmen do, like people who work for a living and have to put up with this economy, and have watched our jobs going overseas for years and are tired of it. So anyway, but there's all these people out there, oh God, Trump's destroying the economy and all this kind of thing. And lots of doomsayers, as there always are. And yet things have been okay. Right. So like, what's the issue? Like, first of all, a lot of people believe in free trade. And I understand the concept of free trade, but there's a place for a certain amount of protectionism, right? Alexander Hamilton, the man who founded our financial system in America and basically founded the American economy, was concerned about a number of things that are relevant today. One, that, in his time, like the United States in the 1880s, produced zero cannon, right? And no gunpowder. Like they had to buy a lot of this stuff from France and get a lot of weapons from France and get supplies from the French, aid from them during the war. If you want to have a country, you have to be able to defend it. And if it's going to be able to defend itself, it has to be able to produce those weapons and supplies and goods and whatever that are necessary to its defense. Like, that's just kind of an obvious thing. Well, obviously, just gunpowder, cannon, and ships are not the issue today. Well, wooden ships anyway. But ships are certainly, a different kind of ships are a very big issue today. But that's the point. Like, Hamilton was concerned that we didn't build any warships, we didn't make any cannon, and we didn't manufacture any gunpowder in the United States, or not in great numbers. So this was a matter for the government to promote the manufacture of national security goods, in part by buying those goods, and possibly also he proposed a bounty system to create manufacturing and grow industry in the U.S., nascent industry. And of course, people are going, Hamilton supported corporate welfare. There were no corporations to welfare back then. I mean, he was trying to kickstart industrialization. It ended up happening anyway, so it didn't matter. But he had a sound notion. He just the bounty system for manufacturers just went a step too far. But we think about it today. Like, we have to be able to produce steel. We have to be able to produce cruise missiles. We have to be able to produce ships, metal, modern steel ships, right? Aircraft, just a litany of high-tech things. And the chips that run all of that here inside the United States. And I've talked about it before. There's this horror scenario that, all of the chips that run our high-tech weapon systems, our cruise missiles, our hypersonics, our, all of our high-tech weapon systems, all those chips come from Taiwan, right? They are, 90 miles off the coast of China. And if China blockades Taiwan, there's no more of that coming, right? We have to be able to manufacture that stuff here. So, to a certain degree, Donald Trump's tariff policy is a national security matter. Hamilton's second concern that I'm going to raise here is really important, is that he was very concerned that too much of the country's wealth might fall into the hands of too few people. Now, in his time, of course, he was concerned about things that had happened in England recently. To him, Sir Robert Walpole and the financial crisis of the earlier in the 18th century would have come to mind. But, you get a small clique with a lot of money, then their bad investments, their investment mistakes lead to major economic problems. And you end up with this crusty elite that run the whole government. They run the whole economy. They own everything, right? And we've seen that happen in the last 60-odd years. The wealth has slowly risen to the top 20%, and they own everything. And the working class population, the middle class, has become less wealthy. We've become poorer. Well, we're tired of that. We're done with it. As Batya Ungar-Sargon was talking about, people want the shift of the wealth to come back to the middle class. And that's what Donald Trump is working on with these protective tariffs, that would require other countries to, lower trade barriers. And that's the point, the big point I want to make about all of this, now having kind of concluded the Hamilton thought here. The big thing people are missing in the whole tariff debate, and it's infuriating to me because it's so TDS and Orange Man bad and Trump's destroying the economy and all this kind of thing. They immediately want to go to all the negatives. If you're going to be negative about reality. Okay, don't make up fantasies about how Trump's trying to destroy the economy. First of all, Trump was trying to lower taxes and make his rich friends richer yesterday. Now he's trying to destroy the economy. I mean, pick a narrative here. You know what I mean? I talked about in the last episode. The left is going to have to pick one. If he's not making his friends rich, he's destroying the economy. I don't know. I mean, come on, people, pick one. In any case, the reciprocal tariffs, the goal of the tariffs is to reduce trade barriers, right? The problem we have is, in the Bretton Woods arrangement, the Bretton Woods Agreement, the system that the United States created during the Cold War, we abnegated our economic interests. We let other countries have undue access to our economy. We sacrificed from ourselves to them to grow their wealth, the Marshall Plan, among other things. But, we let them take advantage of us if they were willing to be cannon fodder in the Cold War. Right? That was a good system. It worked. It got a little bit hairy in the 70s, but by the 80s, we were making it work, right? Once we stopped, trying to spend our way out of poverty under Reagan's administration, cut taxes, let the economy grow, things got better. Well, 1991, the Soviet Union collapsed. So in the first years after the Cold War, in that last year of George W. Bush's George H.W. Bush, George Bush Sr., in the last year of his term, we should have started changing that Bretton Woods arrangement. And, Bill Clinton certainly should have. But no, everyone bought into free trade and continued doing this for another 30 years that completely crushed the middle class. The fact is, the Bretton Woods system no longer works for us. We don't need it. Okay? There's no point to it. There is no Cold War. Well, maybe Cold War II. But right now, we are so much and so vastly wealthier than the rest of the world, and we have the largest consumer economy. We don't need to be giving away from ourselves, right? We don't need to be abnegating our economic interests to the world anymore. again, this is 30 years too late. Like Bill Clinton could have slowly raised tariffs here and there and added certain protections and then, encouraged other countries to lower their trade barriers and say, hey, okay, so we were giving it away and you still had tariffs on our goods. Okay, now you need to lower the tariffs on our goods or we're going to raise tariffs on yours. Right? And slowly but surely, calmly and comfortably, we could have spent 8 years of the Clinton presidency slowly renegotiating our deals with the world, and all this kind of thing. Instead, again, NAFTA and all these free trade arrangements and what have you. And Ross Perot knew that stuff was bad. Like, that was the big Perot movement, was pushing against the free trade system, which both parties had subscribed to. So that required a third party to oppose it. Anyway, this is too little too late, but it's a start. It's headed in the right direction. So real quick, let's talk about the particulars of our trade situation, right? First of all, in terms of exports, where are U.S. exports going? Well, our top 5 export markets are the big ones, right? So 17, about, these are rough, approximate numbers, but I rounded, to a whole percent here and there. Canada receives about 17% of U.S. exports. Mexico, 16%, right? For those who are doing the math, that's about a third of U.S. exports right there. China gets another 7%, Japan 4%, and the UK 3.7%. I didn't want to round that one up because it's important to understand why the UK is like, 2-3%, tenths of a percent below Japan. That means that, that's about 48% of U.S. exports right there. But if we take China out, because China is about 7%, it's about 41%, right? Now, the U.S. exports about 18% to the Eurozone, to the European Union, right? While that's many countries, that's the point. Like, they're a block of countries. So yes, we have direct trade with France, with Germany and all this kind of thing, but through the EU negotiates its trade deals as a block, right? That way they have a customs union and a common market and all of this kind of thing and common currency. So that's another 18%. Well, China exclusive, that's almost 60% of our exports right there, and the rest of the world is another 40%, is the remaining 40%. All of those countries except China are now renegotiating their trade deals, right? Japan was the first to come forward. The UK is renegotiating with the US. We're going to do like a 10% tariff, and they're going to do a 10%, but we're going to keep it down to that, right? The UK really does need to protect some of its industries. But at the same time, fair's fair. We're putting on them the tariffs they're going to put on us. Canada and Mexico are going to renegotiate, and the European Union. Now, the EU is really good at drawing things out and driving a hard bargain normally, like they did with the Brexit negotiations with the UK. However, circumstances are a little bit different today because today, we have Donald Trump in office, and he's supposed to be a guy who can drive a hard bargain. And when it comes to trade deals, he has done pretty well. So I think with the EU, the question is how long can they wait for, to reach a deal? Because their usual delaying tactics and hardball just aren't going to work with the Donald. Trump doesn't need them as badly as they think. Because, again, a third of our exports stay right here in North America, right? And right there, 1 in 3, goods manufactured in the U.S. ends up in the same continent, right? So, the European Union is less than a fifth, but, it would be good to have a deal, but they can't just keep taking advantage of us. Now, obviously, China has chosen a trade war. They've raised tariffs so high that they say they're not going to bother raising them anymore. They're like 125% or something like. U.S. goods are so expensive in China now that they're no longer marketable. That's their argument. So there's no point in them raising tariffs any farther. Obviously, Trump raising tariffs on China is a big thing for reducing their trade with us if they're not going to negotiate. Got the Chinese kind of caught between a rock and a hard place. They can't negotiate with Donald Trump without being humiliated, if you will. They can't save face if they are seen to be, giving in to Trump's demands. And they also, can't afford to keep, to have a trade war with us. More on China in a minute. But so far, China's the only major country in the world that has tried to fight us on this. All right, so let's talk about imports. Where do our imports come from? This flips over to the other side, right? So where do we get stuff from outside the United States? Well, Mexico, believe it or not, is 14.6%. So almost 15% of our imports come from Mexico, right? And that's actually a pretty good deal for the U.S. Yes, we'd like to bring some of our manufacturing jobs back, but, Mexico's a safe, stable country. They're right on our border. It's a great place for people to work and live, especially if they're, Spanish speaking and from south of the border. Great place for unskilled laborers to come and work. That's a good deal for everyone in Mexico. Be a little bit better deal for us if we renegotiate that, for sure, but hey, so most of our, the largest number of imports for the U.S. come from Mexico. About 13.4% come from China. 13% come from Canada. So again, we're seeing here that a little less than 30%, right, of our imports come from North America. So about a third of our exports stay in North America, about a little less than a third of our imports come from North America. Now, Germany itself is another 5%, and Japan is 4.5% of imports. So you can kind of see the imbalance a little bit there. I'm not talking about numbers here. These are just percentages of the total. I just wanted to make that, draw that point out, right? Now, the EU, including Germany, is about 18% of imports to the U.S. Excluding Germany, it's about 13.5%. I just, Germany made the top 5 in and of itself in terms of exports to the U.S., or imports to the U.S., as opposed to exports from the U.S. So you get an idea here who our trading partners are. Obviously, Mexico and Canada are the most important. And so renegotiating our trade deals with them, renegotiating USMCA into a very favorable trade relationship for the U.S., that's a very, very good deal. Renegotiating with the EU, a further 18% of our exports, right? And about the same number of imports. Very good deal, right? Getting more of our stuff out there, that means more jobs here. And those who want to fight us, like China, well, that just means we're going to have to make more things here. Now, like one more thing before I go into the China situation is just, if you don't understand deglobalization, this gets very confusing. And so I found a lot of people out there who are arguing on this tariff thing, and I'll ask them about rising cost of labor in China, and they have no idea. Demographics, no idea, right? So in this time of demographic winter where, population pyramids are getting diamond-shaped, right? We have smaller and smaller generations being born in countries like China. The population is aging. They're not able to manufacture as much as they did before, and the labor isn't as inexpensive, right? And this isn't the first country. Japan's already been through this. Germany is entering the final throes of it. It's a big problem, right? You need a young, healthy, and vibrant population to produce things. Like, this isn't rocket science. So these countries that have been producing things for us are just not up to the task. So as Peter Zion, another great geopolitics, I don't want to call it podcaster, writer, economist, that he does his YouTube videos as well, which I'm fond of watching. Although now that he's gone to Patreon, I watch all of them 2 weeks late. But a lot of his stuff is also TDS, so just a fair warning there. But he's been talking for some time about how there will come a day when goods from China just stop. Like, it could happen just like that. Like, we ordered things from China and they just stopped coming, right? The Chinese economy could just grind to a halt. And then who's going to make our things, right? Medicines, toys, electronics, smartphones, so many things made in China, they just stopped coming, right? We've known this is a problem for some time. This is not new, okay? By choosing this trade war, Trump is just expediting the bad news. Like, it was coming, okay? We knew this was coming. And now, we have, we have to act. Like, come on, people, wake up. Okay, the stuff from China is going to stop coming. So all these people, the consumer prices are going to go up. Well, first of all, electronics have been exempted from the tariffs, like iPhones and computers and this kind of thing, because, Trump's not trying to raise consumer prices. But at the same time, that was going to happen anyway, just not at a time of our choosing. Could be next year, could be the year after that, right? Could have happened later this year anyway, like this September. It could have just been stuff stops flowing from China. Okay, it's coming. Shouldn't we prepare? Like, we know this is coming. Should we not prepare? And I don't mean prepare like, let's run for the hills and freak out and overreact. But, we should start looking to produce those things elsewhere, right? Already Apple's moving to India, right? Already companies are moving from China to countries in Southeast Asia. Already we are seeing a shift. Right? Trump is just getting ahead of it, right? He's just pushing us to get ahead of the game. It is frustrating when people don't know what's going on. But you, my friends, do know what's going on because you guys are hip and with the program, and that's that. So let's talk about China. So a huge chunk of the Chinese economy involves exports to the United States. And while China receives a good amount of imports from the U.S. They're not, it's not devastating to the Chinese economy on paper, right? You look at it and it's like, well, they've got, it's going to slow their growth and this kind of thing. Is something like, 3-4% of their economy. Well, yes, but China's in a very weak situation right now. We've known for some time that the Chinese economy is running on empty. I mean, that they have all of this, all their debt is backed by real estate that's vacant, right? They have enough real estate to house France. Some people are claiming they have enough real estate available to house the whole population of China. I mean, we don't know, right? They don't publish these numbers, so it can be kind of difficult. But the point is they have a lot of vacant real estate that's being used to prop up their economy. There's only so much you can do for an economy to prop it up on Xi Jinping's say-so. So China's in big trouble from this. And at the very least, this is going to knock 3-4% off of China's growth if they don't come to some kind of trade deal. But without that growth, it's hard to talk about China's growth. So much of it is fake, my friends. Like they first of all, they make a lot of it up. Just in terms of fake reporting, but a lot of their quote unquote growth is the government financing things, and government run companies and this kind of thing. So a lot of it's funny money already, right? So the real growth in China's economy is us, right? So Trump has got them where he wants them. And if they want to choose a trade war, fine. That just means less U.S. money going over there that the Chinese are using to finance their military buildup and, an attempt to, antagonize Taiwan and threaten our allies and weaken U.S. power in the world. And, their attempts to destroy the rules-based international order. Anyway, so, we'll just see what happens. But China is not going to do well with this trade war. They are not in the position for it. And we have the largest consumer economy in the world, right? If you want access to it, you have to do so on our terms now. Now, in the big picture, this is all going to be over soon. Within the next few months, Trump's suspended the tariffs for 90 days. Within 90 days, we'll have deals hammered out with most of the world, right? Again, 40% of our exports go to countries smaller than the UK and Japan, South Korea, Israel, other places. Many of those countries have already dropped their trade barriers or offered to negotiate. So, I mean, that's all pretty good. The tariffs on McDonald Island, Heard Island, McDonald Island were funny. There's no one lives there. They're populated by only by penguins. So we've had lots of jokes about tariffs on the penguins. And since I made a reference to the Madagascar series, which my kids love very much, I'll have to make another one. We have some kind of a situation where the penguins are trying to buy something, and Skipper sees a note like have to pay the tariff. Kowalski, analysis. Skipper, it seems that we have tariffs that have been placed on us. Rico, it's just awful. We put tariffs on penguins, my friends. That's how far we went. But the point is, again, to get countries to lower their trade barriers and open up to trade. Now, if you believe in free trade, my palm is on my forehead, my friends. If you believe in free trade, this is how you get free trade. You don't get free trade by, having no tariffs on Japan, and Japan having, say, 25% tariffs on all U.S. goods coming in, right? And then saying to the Japanese, oh, please, would you kindly lower your tariffs? It would be very nice of you if you would. No, that's not how this works. You slap a 25% tariff on Japanese goods, and all of a sudden they're like, oh, yes, okay, well, we could lower our tariffs on your goods if you'll lower. Yeah, anyway. It's ridiculous how these things are promoted out there and how we hear about them in the media and whatever. But again, as that poll I said, by a margin of 24 points, people believe these tariffs will create jobs. The American people are not stupid, right? We know what's going on. All right. So there's that. I mentioned already the polls, Trump's popularity continues. So, the American people know what's going on and they're supportive. The Democrats continue to be at, 27, 28, 29% approval. And Kamala Harris is still leading in their presidential polls for 2028. So they still haven't a clue. They have no idea what's going on and what have you. It looks like, they're going to have to be shellacked in the midterms before they'll realize, we may have really messed up. You think? Anyway, we will see what happens. Okay, so one of the things I talked about last time, Trump shooting his mouth off on Canada, I prefer him as president. There are very few things where I disagree. And yes, I've been critical because some of those things are important. On the tariff policy, I definitely agree with Trump. But his jokes about making Canada the 51st state and all of that, while it got rid of Trudeau, it's also created political problems in Canada because Mark Carney, who has succeeded Trudeau, now puts a fresh face on the Liberal Party, right? For 10 years, for 3 terms of the House of Commons in Canada, they've had this Liberal government, and it has been a train wreck. By every metric, Canada is worse off than it was 10 years ago. And if they continue with their immigration policies the way they are, something like a third of the country will be foreign-born by 2050. It's ridiculous. You can't live that way. All right. No country would live that way. Not Nigeria, not Mexico. It can't be done. It's never been done in the U.S. So this is, you bring in immigrants and then you let them integrate. You bring them in and you let them in. That's why you have to bring them in a trickle. Okay. And there are different degrees of integration. When America brought in a lot of people from Eastern Europe, yeah, they were different. Like Poles are Catholics. So they're not Protestant, but America has a large Catholic minority. There were a lot of Jews from Eastern Europe, made themselves at home. We integrated a lot of Irish immigrants and so on and so forth. And they very easily, they came here and they very easily adapted to the culture. We take in today people from India, China, Japan, Africa, South America, so on and so forth. From all over the world, people come to America and some of them integrate quite nicely. Right? They join American culture, and that's a wonderful thing. But we also have cultures that are not friendly to ours. I'm thinking of one in particular. We get a lot of people who come here, like Ilhan Omar, and start advocating militant Islam. Advocating for terrorism. We're deporting some of these people from our universities. It's beautiful to see. But anyway, Canada has ended up with a lot of people who are part of these incompatible cultures, and it's been a big problem, and that's a big issue. But there are many other problems. Their energy production is down. The Canadians have just, Trudeau has just destroyed that country. It's a lovely country. I work up there a lot, and so I spend a lot of time in Canada. They're lovely people. I hope if you're listening from Canada, hi-oh. It's a Tim Hortons, eh? It's a lovely country, and I've had a lot of fun up there, and you guys play pool very well. I will say that much. It's a great time up there every time I visit, but that's you can tell the economy's down and the people are struggling, right? And that the integration isn't working. You can go to, because I like to eat a lot of ethnic foods, let's just say. I'll go to an Ethiopian restaurant, and I went to one in particular, and no one there spoke English, right? The guy who ran the place and two of the customers in broken English were trying to take my order. Now, I love Ethiopian people. Don't get me wrong. I'm not picking on Ethiopians. I know a lot of great Ethiopian people, and I met a good number who speak great English. But, you can't function in a country if you don't speak the language. So these guys are in there. None of them speak English. Like 3 of them had broken English, right? You can't. That's not integrating, right? And if you have places where you can go and it's, I could understand, hey, you want to go to your restaurant and speak Amharic with your friends. Okay. But you should be able to speak English too. Okay. You need to be able to be functional. So that's been a big problem. So Canada has a lot of issues. And anti-Semitism, very severe anti-Semitism is one of them. Well, the Conservative Party under Poilievre is, they've made a really impressive comeback. Poilievre has been, he's been awesome. He's been going and visiting with the working class people, and he had a great thing going. He was going to stomp up and down on the Liberals in the polls, and then Trudeau left, and Mark Carney was chosen, and the Liberals came back. In significant part because of Trump's talk about a 51st state and all this kind of thing. Canadians are still proud of their country, and they have good cause to be. It is a separate country, and it's not going to become part of the U.S. Although, I will say, if Canada wants to go the wrong way, Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, even Western Ontario, there's a lot of Canada that is pretty close to being American. Those 3 provinces, Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba, plus, again, even Western Ontario, that area of Canada would be, able to be a state similar to, Montana in the U.S., with a lot of energy production and all that kind of good stuff. So there you go. Poilievre has started to make a comeback in the polls now. The Conservatives are back in the lead. It's a small lead, but just a couple points at this point. But hopefully that will lead to a Conservative victory. Canada really needs to turn around, and a victory, a win for Poilievre now would be incredible, because Canada would make a huge comeback. Their booming economy would be good for us as well. Again, huge chunk, right? 17% of our exports go to Canada, right? 13% of our imports come from Canada, right? It'd be a good deal for them to be doing well and for us to be doing well. We could share in our prosperity. It'd be a good thing. So hopefully, we'll have a win for Poilievre there. So when I get back from the break, I will talk about what's going on in the rest of the world outside of North America and our trade wars, and then go into some procurement talk. I can only talk about one procurement issue per episode because there's only so much time, but I want to talk about this one because it's going to be, this one's pretty cool. You're listening to Mensch-Kight Geopolitics with Isaac Kite. Or as the internet trolls say, mouthpiece of the Zionist conspiracy, spokesman for the elders of Zion, highly paid propagandist of the Mossad. Yeah, no. Now you're messing with the son of a mensch. All right, we're back from the break. Lots of topics still to talk about. We still have no ceasefire between Russia and Ukraine. So we started this process, the Trump administration started this process completely backwards, bullied Zelensky and Ukraine into trying to get them to get some kind of a deal on minerals and be willing to accept a ceasefire. Went through all that, and Ukraine finally was willing to accept a ceasefire. But Ukraine isn't the aggressor. Ukraine didn't start this war. You wouldn't know that from listening to Donald Trump. He keeps talking about, Zelensky having some role in starting the war. He didn't surrender. I guess that's a way in which he started the war, but he didn't declare war. He didn't give orders to Russian troops to invade Ukraine. Vladimir Putin did all of that. So it's ridiculous, the rhetoric we're getting here. And I realize Trump's rhetoric is usually related to his negotiating position, and he's still holding out some kind of hope that he can get Russia to come on board. But it seems that, the administration is slowly waking up to the reality that Russia doesn't want peace. Now, I could have told you that. In fact, I did. Listeners to this podcast, you will know I talked about this since, over a year ago that we have this axis of evil, right? We have Russia, China, North Korea, Iran, right? That they're all working together. They have different interests, but they're working together to destroy the America-led international rules-based system. So, and Putin had bet his country and everything on the war. There you go. So, I knew from the beginning this wasn't going to work. I said so, and funny thing, I've been proven right. This is the thing I talk about. I'd like to be more, I'd like to be wrong, I guess. Nobody likes to be wrong. There are times when I wish it wasn't like this, because here with the Biden administration, they were completely off base. I talked about that several times, how they didn't seem to comprehend. Like they thought that they could continue to play footsie with Iran and support, the terrorists in the Middle East while, hurting Israel, and then also, keep the war going against Russia and supposedly be anti-Russia. You have to be one or the other, right? You have to pick a side. And if you're on our side, the West, Europe, Israel, the United States, Taiwan, Ukraine, or the other, which is, China, Russia, Iran, North Korea. So you're either on Xi Jinping's side or you're on our side. You have to pick a side. And this attempt to divide them, to say that, we can support these people but not those people, it doesn't work. Now, the Trump administration is better because at least they recognize the threat posed by China, and resources brought in to deal with China can also be brought to bear on North Korea. So that's half the problem right there. But we have to get tough on Russia. And this attempt to do the reverse Kissinger and peel Russia away from this axis, it's not going to work. The Russians are committed. How committed are they? They're not signing the ceasefire, and it's not going to happen. And they're starting to realize this at the White House, according to a number of different sources that are reporting on the issue. So here we are, this far into the Trump administration, and guess what? It's exactly the way I said it was. All the experts, all the smart people that the administration has, all of the, the talking heads and consultants and all of that, and intelligentsia, all those people that the president has surrounding him, all the president's men, and yet you get better analysis here on Mensch-Kight Geopolitics with your lovable landsman, because I know what's going on, and I'm just a landsman. I work for a living, just like everybody else. It's 7 kids to raise. It's a lot of work. So anyway, what's going to happen? I don't know. Trump is refusing to sell air defenses. We just had a ballistic missile attack in Sumy, 34 people dead, a toddler, children attacked. It's like, and then Russia, well, it was an accident. My arse, it was an accident. They've been deliberately bombing civilians since this war began. And to have Trump repeat that is disappointing. Like I said, I agree with the president's tariff policies and his support for Israel and his policy in Iran and all of that stuff. So 98% of the agenda I'm with. I don't understand why he is so blind and so wrong on this issue. And, hanging around with anti-Semitic, traitorous, cowardly nutters like Tucker Carlson doesn't help. Right, Tucker Carlson, as we've come to take into calling him. It's pronounced gutter in Arabic, but you can put Qatar into his name, Carlson, Tucker Carlson. He's doing more to support Arab interests and Iranian interests than he is American. So, well, anyway, what a schloff. So this Trump blaming Zelensky thing, I don't know. I don't know what else to say. I'm critical. I disagree. I hope Trump will figure out that the Russians are the bad guys and see the Axis for what it is. You can't pry them apart. The best thing we can do now, as I'm about to talk about Iran, is see Russia to a total defeat in Ukraine. With the right firepower, it can be done. The Russian economy is already weak. They're just a little bit more firepower in Ukraine may help. Friedrich Merz, the incoming Bundeskanzler in Germany, has said that he'll send Taurus missiles. Right, that gives a 500-kilometer range or more potentially to air-launched missiles, cruise missiles. Right, so the Ukrainians could launch cruise missiles deeper into Russia. They still have drones that are able to fly deep into Russia, but cruise missiles are much more accurate. So that would be a positive step for Ukraine. To give them the right firepower, and they will go do this thing. Okay, if Russia is totally defeated in Ukraine, they will never pose a threat to us again, right? And we'll just have to keep an eye on their nuclear arsenal, which is rusting and decaying. They can't really afford to keep it up. That means, especially now that we're chomping down and clamping down on Iran, that would leave China and North Korea isolated. North Korea really can't do much but offer a distraction. China's the real issue. If we, the West, the allies, the good guys in the world, could collectively bring all of our assets to bear on China, even now, that would be deterrent, right? The Chinese would be in big trouble. We are so close, my friends. I can taste it. We could have China isolated and contained, but part of it's the trade war. The Europeans need to step up. They need to stop trading with China as much, and they need to back off from that. And the other part of it is defeating Russia and Iran. Okay, so with Iran, like I said, we have more B-1 bombers, more B-2 bombers have been sent to the region. We have B-2 bombers in Diego Garcia in the Indian Ocean, well within range of Iran. Of course, they can fly anywhere in the world within 24 hours by refueling in air and all this kind of thing from Whiteman Air Force Base in Missouri. But they can also, be stationed at forward bases like Diego Garcia, from which they can go and bomb the snot out of Iran if need be. And 7 bombers out there, that's a lot of firepower. And they can drop big bombs like the various large GBU bombs. Those are the bunker busters, right? And the new bunker buster is a pretty smart one. The GBU 57. It beats all of the thing. I don't have time to go into it, but I mean all the stuff about we originally were blasting through the concrete because while concrete is very strong, it doesn't stretch, right? So if you bend it, basically it crumbles, and so that's the penetrating force kind of bends and breaks the concrete that way. Like I said, I don't want to get too technical. The Iranians have started using a new kind of concrete that's supposed to be more flexible and thus better able to defend against that. They've tried creating false chambers so that, if it breaks through the first layer, it might detonate and then do no harm. We can defeat all of those. This bomb is smart enough to know when there's a false chamber, and it can break through the new concrete. So if I were the Iranians, I'd be a little worried. Normally, I would think the Iranians would try to delay and dissemble and do their usual games and attack with their proxies to delay and distract. But they don't really have that option. Hezbollah and Hamas are in no position to distract. They're very incredibly, extremely weak right now. On top of the fact that, the Houthis are all that's left and there's only so much they can do to distract. So Iran is really in a weak position. They have no air defenses. They're probably scrambling to put whatever air defenses together that they can. But Russia needs its air defenses, so it's not like they can give a lot to Iran. Israel has knocked out most of their air defenses, so whatever's left, it'll be brushed aside very quickly. And, I have to take a moment to note, your air defenses are great, but they can't do anything if they can't lock on to the target. So if the B-2s come over to drop bombs in Iran, you can't shoot what you can't see. So good luck. Not really. Bad luck. Not going to work out. Anyway, so, is this going to happen? Are we going to bomb them? Possibly. I think the Iranian government the regime may actually back down here. There is a possibility that out of, some effort to, for some thought of self-preservation. I mean, at this point, the regime is very weak. They don't have any proxies. This might be the time to make a deal and back down. We will see. Meanwhile, Israel continues to keep Hezbollah at bay in Lebanon. There have been ongoing operations there. The operations in Gaza continue. Israel now controls 40% of the Gaza Strip, and they've divided it into several sections. The southern portion along the Rafah crossing, the crossing with Egypt, Israel has taken complete control of that, and Israel's not giving that up, what we call the Philadelphia corridor. That's important for security. Can't let the terrorists smuggle things in from Egypt. So that's a big change. I wish there were some other way to do things, but it looks like Israel's just going to have to take control of the area, and we'll see what happens. Trump has talked about maybe the U.S. taking direct control there. In the meantime, Hamas still fires rockets occasionally, very rarely, but occasionally into Israel. Israel has got its thumb on them. Every day or so, there's, some terrorist, either someone involved in October 7th or a Hamas leadership person, someone in their leadership, what have you, gets whacked. And so, they're losing their fourth, fifth tier people now. I mean, they've everyone else has been killed. So, the talent is dead. So Hamas is in really bad shape. Now, given that this podcast was Inside Israel News, I spent a lot of time talking about Israeli politics. So a quick update there. Polls are difficult in Israel, and they have their ups and downs. As I've talked about before, you have to take polls with a grain of salt, really big grain of salt in Israel, because the Israeli polls are notoriously inaccurate. So, like I said, big grain of salt. But again, because it's a proportional system and people vote for parties, not for individuals, you can get kind of a general idea. And the way the polls look, the opposition still looks really good. Now, there's no election that's been called. So, again, very big grain of salt. But polls are leaning, generally, so between 55 and 60% for the opposition. Now, the opposition doesn't necessarily mean they can form a government. Like I said, the opposition at all includes Arab parties that don't join the coalition. Ra'am, which is technically a religious and nationalist party, Arab party, led by Mansour Abbas. They've sort of kind of joined the change bloc government before, the last government that wasn't Bibi Netanyahu's government. But in a time like this, you just can't count on them joining the government. You can't fight a war against Iran and all this kind of thing and deal with the Palestinians while you have an Arab party in the government. But it looks like it's possible the change bloc may be able to form a government. So it depends on the circumstances with the war and the situation that Israel finds itself in, and when an election is called and people get really serious about their political thinking. But Israel has to hold an election by the end of 2026, and we'll see what happens. It's entirely possible that this may be Bibi's last term. He's probably going to drag it out as long as he can. Obviously, there won't be an election while the war is on. And as I've said, I mean, the results of the conflict, the results of the situation are going to determine how that election goes. But this may very well be Bibi Netanyahu's last term. Can he theoretically squeak into another term? We'll see. Anything is possible, but the way the polls are looking right now, it's not looking promising. However, they never say never in Israeli politics, especially. So, there are lots of people, Bibi's done. He'll never return to office back at in the late 90s and early aughts. Well, he came back. So, within the decade, you just never say never. So thought I'd give you a little update there. So we recently had unveiled the new F-47, the 6th gen fighter. It's one of 2 6th gen fighter programs that the United States has. Several other countries have. There's Britain, Japan, and South Korea are working on one. Germany and France, Spain, they're working on one. There are a couple of different versions of 6th gen fighters. The Chinese and the Russians claim to be working on them. I don't think we'll ever see a Russian 6th gen fighter. They barely built a 5th gen fighter, the Sukhoi 57, which, they only built a handful of them. And so far, it looks like only one of them flies. And that may have been destroyed by the Ukrainians. They might have to find a way to get another one flying. Anyway. So, China may develop something that they'll call a 6th gen fighter. But I just wanted to take a minute to talk about this plane because this is a very cool thing. I talked about the submarine situation in the last episode. But, while it'll be expensive and we probably won't be able to build as many of them as we might like, the technological capabilities will be impressive and it'll be very valuable. For one thing, it'll be capable of flying without a pilot. Right. It can be operated as a drone, but it can also be flown by a pilot. Right. That's beneficial because, of course, if the pilot blacks out, the plane can take over. We have that technology in the F-22 Raptor already, but, this will be a good thing for the F-47 as well. All this high-tech stuff, in addition to the usual range of high-tech precision weaponry that it'll be able to carry, it'll be very stealthy. It has no vertical stabilizers because those are, those really have a high radar cross-section. The F-35 has those V-shaped fins on the back, but those do return radar signatures. And operating a plane without one means that you have much lower radar cross-section, ergo like the B-2 and the B-21 stealth bombers. B-21's our first 6th gen stealth plane. They have no tail fins. Anyway, so the F-47 is going to have an onboard laser that can be used to intercept incoming fire. It's going to have all kinds of wonderful tech, integrated battlefield stuff, collecting the SIGINT and all this kind of stuff like the F-35 does, so on and so forth. So a really high-tech plane. It may have canards, which are like, having your basically, those are fins that you put on the front of the plane. I'm trying to explain what they are in a simple way, on the front of the fuselage before the main wing that help you, fly. And it basically, they can act a little bit like a rudder and provide greater stability. Boeing, of course, won the contract, so it'll be Boeing's F-47. And this is just going to be a great high-tech plane. I, for one, am excited about a lot of the technologies in it. One in particular is the adaptive cycle engine. This is incredible jet engine technology. How to explain this and why it's so cool. I geek out about this stuff. So, jet engines have 2 airflows, right? You have a core flow that goes through the engine, through the fan. It goes into the combustion chamber where the where you have the jet fuel burning and, then through the turbine basically, and out. And then you have nozzles at the back of the jet engine. That's where you get your afterburners, right? Because they just basically add kind of an extra rocket propulsion to the back of your engine because why not? This is just cool stuff. But you also have, a bypass flow, right, that goes around the jet engine. This helps to cool things. It improves fuel efficiency, does a lot of good stuff for the engine, right? So you have these 2 airflows, right? Now, normally you kick, you have a certain amount of air that just goes, that is intended to go into the core flow and a certain amount that goes into the bypass flow. And that is determined by the nature of the engine, by the construction of the engine and the air intakes. Oh, but technology has changed. Now we have an adaptive cycle engine where you can direct a certain percentage of the airflow either to bypass or into the core. So when we want this engine to go full power, we want maximum performance, we can kick in a huge amount of the airflow into the core, we can turn it up to full blast, turn on our afterburners, and go supersonic, right? It's not going to be hypersonic because probably not going to exceed speeds of Mach 5, but this will be a supersonic fighter. In all likelihood, it'll be able to achieve, supersonic speeds without afterburners, like the F-22 can. And then when you kick on the afterburners, you'll go up over Mach 2, right? Which is twice the speed of sound for those of you in Rio Linda. But when we want to, when we want to loiter, right? Let's say we're on a patrol north of Taiwan, watching for, Chinese aircraft or what have you. We want the engine to be at peak efficiency. We want minimum of fuel burning. We can kick more of that flow out to the bypass, and that just makes the engine run more efficiently, cooler, and burning less fuel, and allowing the plane to stay aloft. It's kind of a flying wing design, but just allows you to stay aloft longer and burn less fuel, be more efficient. Now that is beautiful, my friends. That is just, I love it. I mean, you can just switch it from one to the other. Anyway, I geek out about this stuff, and I just thought I'd tell you about it because I find it exciting. I'm also particularly keen on these lasers because, we're getting high-powered lasers like Iron Beam in Israel and others. They take up a lot of power, but since you don't have to fire a projectile, there's no reloading. There's a little bit of recharge time and cooldown time. But basically, you can use a laser to shoot down multiple incoming projectiles, and you don't run out of ammunition. You just need more power, right, to power the laser. So it's a cool and innovative way to operate. But when you think about a plane having the ability to defend itself, I mean, planes have flares that they can divert missiles with, but they don't really have an active defense, So this is going to be an active defense, lasers, right? It's going to be super cool. The other 6th gen fighter program we have, the F-XX program, that's the Navy largely is driving that. That'll be a bomber, not a fighter. The idea of the F-47 is an air supremacy plane, right? It's designed to go out there and control the skies. But the F-XX is going to be a program that'll be hopefully making some progress here in the future. That's going to be able to be a bomber, right? A stealthy, high-tech bomber for the Navy and, for other services and what have you. Potentially, I don't know if the Air Force would be interested, but, the Navy, the Marines, right, will have this bomber. Possibly the Air Force too, I suppose. And then they'd have a new stealth bomber, but, fighter bomber, I guess you could say. The F-117 attack plane, which was pitched as a fighter, but it's actually a bomber. Anyway, it's out of service, so might be good for the Air Force to have another attack plane. Anyway, they have the B-21 bomber coming, so they'll have a 6th gen bomber, and they're going to have all kinds of cool stuff there. But anyway, there you go. So 6th gen fighters, high tech, very cool, adaptive cycle engines, much coolness. My boys and I are geeking out about it. It's a lot of fun. So there you go. American high tech innovation. We're making cool stuff. So with that, it's been another exciting episode. I'm going to try to get back to you sooner. It's got to be less than 2 weeks between episodes. I'm getting there. I want to have a weekly episode out. It'd be great. But I also want to, stay abreast of events and bring you stuff as things happen. So I will say, as always, with that, goodbye, Lahitro.
Writers of the history, stand with me. Look into my eyes and see. People go away but never say goodbye. Someone stole the moon tonight, took my light. Everything is black and white. Who's the fool who told you boys don't cry? Hours and hours and flowers. Life is no game for the cowards. Why? The time goes by. Every day I'm losing my mind, holding on in this mysterious ride, dancing in the storm. We got nothing to hide. Take me fantasy, ecstasy, everything is meant to be. We shall pass, but love will never die. Hours and hours and flowers, life is no game for the cowards. Why the time goes wild. Every day I'm losing my mind, holding on in this mysterious ride, dancing in the storm. We got nothing to hide. Take me home and leave the world behind. Baby, promise me that never again. I'm still wet from this October rain. October rain. October rain. Baby, promise me that never again. I'm still wet from this October rain. October rain. אין שום, אין מקום, אין אותי מיום ליום. כולם ילדים טובים אחד אחד. Bring them back home now.